So the research that you're supposed to do is now complete, and there's one last thing that you need to do, which is to publish. And sometimes people decide where they are going to publish beforehand, but typically that happens at the very end when the research is done. You have experimental results, and you decide, okay, maybe discuss with your colleagues, your professor, whoever, and then you decide, okay, this is the place to publish. And that is typically a journal, or it could be a conference, but let's focus on journals, right? It's an original work that you need to publish. How does that work? So typically, now you've decided where to publish, and you would head to the place called, typically referred to as, instructions for authors. Now you can see on the screen that is one here for AIAA, one I used to publish a long time ago. And you can see that there are quite a few instructions about different manuscripts, guidelines about how to, different formatting styles, different depending on the type of thing that you're trying to publish, with regards to if it's a formula, if it's a reference, whatever it is. There are different instructions based on different things. Now, this is not just for AIAA, right? Any journal, like let's say AIAA is much more in aeronautics. If you were to go to something like the Lancet, which is of course in more healthcare and more general medicine and so on, they have the same thing, right? So you can see that it's there's very specific instructions provided based on that journal. And Lancet has a family of journals, and they have different instructions for different ones, right? Now, how does this work? So you would go into, so you've done your work, just to recap, right? So you've done your work, you've finished your work, your research is now complete, right? And then you have now chosen a place to publish, which is, say, AIAA, for example, or Lancet, or wherever it is, right? And then before you publish, you need to do this special work, right? Which is to make sure that you are absolutely correct in following the instructions that they've provided, right? So a comma cannot be out of place. Exactly the formatting, the font size, everything else, they need to be absolutely specific. They need to be absolutely matching the instructions provided. If not, it's going to be rejected immediately at this point, right? Most likely it's automatically rejected by some sort of a program. If not, an editor might reject it, right? In some ways, this is a blessing, right? Why? But because imagine that you go here to the next stage, which is AIAA has a peer review process where they are kind of doing the review, right? And so you created the journal, sorry, the manuscript, right? And then you've submitted it. It goes through desk approval, and then it's now on in the review process. So altogether, this process would probably be costing you about 3 to 4 months, right? So let's say 3 months, or roughly 4 months. Okay. Now imagine that you got rejected at this point, right? So you've lost maybe 4 months of your time, as opposed to maybe a 3 weeks to a month of your time, right? So based on this, right? So maybe that's a good thing. But imagine that you got rejected here. So what happens next? So you go, okay, I'm not going to just give up, right? I'm going to create a new manuscript, because every manuscript instructions for the journals are different. Depending on the journal, they have different manuscript instructions. So you're going to create that, you're going to submit that, you're going to do all the work that needs to be done, and then you're going to submit it to, let's say, journals, spacecrafts, or rockets, or whatever it is, right? And then it goes again through the peer review process, because it's original work, right? So now again, it's going to cost you maybe another 3 months or 4 months or something like that, right? So altogether, from the time that you've done your work and to publish, it's cost you maybe about 8 months or maybe a year to get to this point so far. Okay, but then there is the additional element, that you might need to consider, because it's taking such a long time. Somebody else might come along and have published, especially in fields that are in quite a lot of flux, like AI or something like that, where somebody else may have published that particular work, and then here the reviewer says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, this has already been published, so this is not new anymore," right? And then you need to eat your hat. Then what, right? And you feel then there are only fewer, very limited options that you have at that point to really publish and make a name for yourself. Why do you want to do this? Because if you publish in a peer-reviewed journal, that is really the key for you to progress in your career, especially in academia, where you need to move forward. So effectively, this process is taking a lot of time because there are a lot of barriers for researchers to publish. And at the same time, those barriers, depending on the journal, depending on where you're trying to publish, depending on the sector, depending on the subject that you're trying to publish, it might add additional complexities. So how can we do better? How can we do better? We'd love to know what you think about this. It's a hot topic, I know. Please put your comments down below. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so very much. Speak to you soon.